Welcome to another edition of From the Eagle's Nest, and I'm your host, Dr. Russ Moyer.
Hi there, I'm Russ Moyer, the president of Eagle Worldwide Ministries, and I want to welcome you to From the Eagle's Nest. I have back with me again this week two wonderful brothers from the Band of Brothers, Dallas Gooden and Chris Royce. Thank you so much for joining us again this week.
My pleasure.
We had a great time last week in talking. I had a great time with you at the boot camp in Jacksonville. And you have a wonderful group of men that are really reaching out, touching lives one at a time. It's a time for men.
Right.
It's a real season for men. And it's an important way for us to get together and really become the men that we're called to be in our homes and our families.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about the effect that boot camp has on a man in his fatherhood role and in his role as a husband.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, men nowadays, man, we all need to get our hearts back because we need the fullness of the heart God gave us as a warrior to, first and foremost, lead in the home. You know, take care of our wives and serve our wives and lead our children and develop our children and equip them for life in the battle. And that, I mean, that's the way it is today. So the boot camp is designed to do that. And we've seen such fruit. Men that have felt prior to the boot camp like their life didn't matter anymore, or they felt like they had been taken out and lost heart. And so we've seen men come to the boot camps, go through the transformational weekend. It's very different than they expected in most cases, and then go home ready to get on the front lines and take care of their families. And I think of one young man that came to a boot camp, and his wife signed him up for it. And as a gift, a birthday present, sent him to one of the boot camps. And he came, and we found out as we were going through the process that he was starting to head down the wrong road, unbeknownst to his wife, with a young woman at his workplace. Nothing had happened, but they were starting to send some text messages back and forth. And during the boot camp, he realized what a gift from God his wife was, and that even though it was only a couple steps down the wrong road, that he needed to change course immediately, and went back home and did that. And so you think about the impact that that could have over the next 20, 30, 40 years for of course, his marriage and then his children. And so we see things like that happening at the boot camps. It's amazing.
And family and marriage, especially in the Christian community, is under attack today. And many of the men that go there have been affected by wrong parenting or lack of parenting and proper parenting and fatherhood. And they have no real example. But when you're there together in that interaction of men actually trying to do that, how did that impact you and other people around you when you see what happens at the boot camp and that relationship?
Well, one of the most powerful things for us is at the end of the boot camp, we pass around like a survey or a questionnaire or kind of just some final thoughts that men leave behind. One of the things that really stuck out is what we find and what we see is that, you know, throughout our life, the devil comes in and tries to isolate us, right? Whether it's through our father or through a situation that we grew up in. And he starts to isolate us and tell us that we're not good enough, we don't have what it takes, this isn't real, okay? And one of the guys left on the comment card that before the boot camp, he had given up to the point of implying that he was ready to end his deal. And that he felt like he wasn't a good father, that his son and daughter didn't need him, that he had nothing for his wife, that they didn't need him anymore. And see, what started to happen is he started to pay attention and listen with these lies that he's been told. And so he felt before the boot camp that there was no need for him anymore. And what had happened from the impact and the men around him and going through some of the sessions and some quiet times and just, you know, the power of the weekend, he felt renewed. And he felt that he had a purpose and that he knew his purpose. Not only that he had a purpose, but he knew what to do. He was equipped and he was ready to go back and get back into the battle and fight for his family. Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
You know?
And, you know, the boot camp was a spiritual experience to me, but it was not a religious experience.
Right.
There was a whole natural side to it, and there was also the relational side. Like at a boot camp, there's so many different factors and things that were happening all around that made it an exciting time to be there and to see the way it was orchestrated to bring forth the fruit of a life-changing experience for men. Tell me some of the natural things that occur there and how do you enjoy that and put that together?
Sure, and you know, when I went to my first one, it was certainly the most impactful experience that I'd ever had in my life up to that point. I've been involved in a lot of big conferences and different things, and one of the reasons why is because of exactly what you're saying. You know, I enjoyed some of the free time just as much as I did the transformational spiritual times, because as a man, you need to blow off some steam and play some football and do some things. And so we bring elements to the boot camp that are different and unique. And one of them, for example, we had a full-sized catapult. And we were launching pumpkins and having some competitions, and there's all kinds of sports going on there during the free times, and we have hatchet throwing and target shooting and skeet shooting, and each one's a little different depending on where they are in the country. But it's built in on purpose by design to have a lot of time where guys can get together and be guys. There's fishing, there's, it just depends, you know, it's just amazing. And so I think that ministers to a man's heart just as much as some of the other stuff.
Sure. We all have that place that where we like to experience, you know, the adventure.
Absolutely.
And the, you know, the experience together, and to have the men. And I saw such a diversity. There were certainly a lot of professional and business people there.
Right.
But I also had a chance to meet and interact with, you know, some people who were policemen and firemen and public officials, and people from all different walks of life come and can be impacted, you know, by that interaction. And
Ages too. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we've had from age 18, which is the youngest. We even had a 17-year-old sneak into one, and he had a great time, all the way up into men that are in their 80s. You know, so the age range is amazing, and all different. The diversity extends too to different folks from the Hispanic community, guys, African American men, guys from all over the country. It's amazing.
Well, and I'm hoping that some people will connect with you. Some men out there will connect with you. You know, maybe on your email or on your website. And, you know, begin that process of interaction. There are probably a lot of men out there right now who probably just need to talk to somebody and make relationship and make a connection and interact. And, you know, that starts somewhere, you know, and there's someone out there maybe has a heart to minister to men. And they just don't know how and don't have a vehicle.
Absolutely.
What I see this as a tremendous vehicle to reach men and to bring men together. And it's a time for men. It is really a time for men.
And the families benefit. You know, the wives at home, when men come home transformed and their heart is softened and turned back towards their wives and children, it's unbelievable. And one of my favorite sessions is fighting for the hearts of your children. And we talk about that in detail and some things that you can do, practical things that you can do to go home and begin to fight for the hearts of your children, regardless of what the relationship has been like.
Right.
Regardless of how old someone is, or if you're a new dad, or, you know, or you've been a dad for a while, or your kids are grown, and it's my favorite thing to talk about. And actually, as a resource, when men leave the boot camp, we give them a book called The Most Powerful Man in the World, and it's about dads, and it's a book for dads, and it's not a 10-step process or anything like that. It's more through stories and things that have worked in my life and raising our kids, and just having a fantastic relationship with our children. And it's so important. And
Absolutely.
you know, the Word says that God turns the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. And I think that's something He's doing in the world right now.
It's something He's doing absolutely right now, not just in the world, but in the church as well. Because we have the same type statistics and situations that everybody else has. We have the same outside influence that's fighting for the minds and the hearts of our children.
That's right.
And you know, as a young man, I remember that nothing was more important to me than my father's approval. And no matter how often I wasn't able to get that, it was only ever one step away. You know, it was, no matter how far we went down the road, any time that he stepped into that and shared that, it just opened me up to a new experience. So like you said, if there's people out there today that are in that place, it's never too late. You're never too old.
right.
Your children can be grown. They are still waiting there for that, you know, that experience with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know that you had some childhood experiences, and in your own personal life, you've had some situations, and we're going to hear from you in a few minutes about your testimony.
Absolutely.
And you have a very powerful personal testimony, Dallas, and you also have such a great heart for men and for outreach and for evangelism, and you're an impact player. And from the moment I met you, the intensity that was on you, the fire that was in your heart, the passion and compassion that you have as a man ministered to me. You know, I saw it in your eyes, and You know, there's something about looking into a man's eyes and feeling what's going on in their heart.
Right, absolutely.
And, it really opened me up. And I know you guys work together and spend a lot of time together and interact relationally, you know, in family settings. So having one another and being, you know, able to reach that place of personal support is important. You know, and if you're out there and you don't have that, you know, this is a real good time for you really to press into that. And if you'd like to reach us, the number is on the screen, the way that you can get a hold of us. And you can get a hold of us also through Eagle Worldwide Ministries at www.eagleworldwide.com. Why don't you give them your website again, or email, how they can reach you?
There's two ways that you can reach us if you're interested in coming to a boot camp, or maybe wives, if you think it's something your husband would benefit from. And you want to get him registered, and you know, the first thing you could do is you could send us an email. And it's very simple to remember. It's bandofbrothersbootcamp@gmail.com. Okay, bandofbrothersbootcamp@gmail.com. Or you could visit our webpage, which is www.bootcampdetails.com. And that has a listing of everything where all the boot camps coming up, and how to register and attend one of the boot camps.
And we're going to break now, and Maeve is going to minister to you in song and meet me. And you're going to hear from Dallas, his testimony, and we'll be right back in just a minute.
And I'll meet you in the quiet of this room. I'll close the door on life, Lord, for a moment with you. Meet me, and I'll meet
Hey, for those of you who didn't catch my name earlier, my name is Dallas Gooden, and I just want to take a minute to share with you what's on my heart, kind of what God has done for me over the past few years here, certainly with my family and my children. My wife and I have 4 beautiful children, and I just want to kind of share with you what God's been doing. I grew up in the Syracuse area, Syracuse, New York. I grew up in a, you know, kind of the white picket fences type of household. You know, everything is great from the outside. I live in a community, like a suburb of Syracuse, you know, where everything is supposed to be perfect. Everything is supposed to, you know, mom and dad always get along, and everything's great. Everything's hunky-dory. Everything's peaches. And I just want to tell you that that's not true always. Okay, and that for those of you who are watching and are kind of picking up on what I'm saying, I grew up in a household where there was a lot of anger. There was violence. There was abuse. There was chaos. You know, I remember at a very early age, one of the things that stuck in my mind was that I went to bed every night scared. You know, one of my earliest memories was getting picked up from a Little Learners Preschool, it was called, and being brought to the bar and hanging out at a bar with my dad for hours. You know, I used to sit and play the little slide bowling game. You know, they had the little metal pieces that stuck up. And I would sit at the bar with my dad for hours until it was time to go home. And my mother would pick up my brother. He was a little bit younger than I was. My brother's 2 years younger than I was, that I am. And we would meet at home. And that's when it would really start. When we got home, the chaos would start, the yelling, the complaining, just total craziness. And I remember just falling asleep at night with my brother. We stayed in the same room and wondering what were those noises that we were hearing. And it wasn't a good time. You know, it was, some of you know what I'm talking about right now. I don't have to go into grave detail. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I just want you to know if that's you, you're not alone. Okay, and the truth is there's stories like that across the country, and that you're not alone, and that I know what you're feeling, or I know what you've dealt with, right? And that's one of the things that we have to focus on and pay attention to, is that we have an enemy. And Satan comes to lie, steal, and destroy, and to take away the plan that God our Father actually has for us. Right now, I didn't know any of this. Okay, I was just a little boy growing up in a suburban area and trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out if I was good enough, if I had what it takes to be good at sports, to go on and have a family, and really, I had no equipping. All right, it was me, it was my friends, and I started to grab a hold of sports, and I accelerated into sports. But I couldn't mask the pain of my home life. And at a young age, I was out and about doing all sorts of crazy things. I had become the boy in the community that you didn't want your kids to hang out with. Everything that I came in contact with, I destroyed. I got heavily involved in drugs and alcohol. I started hanging out with the older crowd. I mean, if you can take, you know, a beating from a man, you can certainly take a beating from a 17-year-old, 18-year-old snot-nosed punk kid. And through that, I accelerated in pain and anger, and masking that with drugs and alcohol. And that's what my lifestyle began with, okay? And I remember sleeping on people's couches and just the feeling of, you know what, I'm on my own. One of the biggest things that I remember, though, in my life was the agreement that I made. I had gotten in a fight. My father, for some reason, put me into martial arts. And I had gotten in a fight, and I had broken my nose. And I remember the instructor grabbing my nose, popping it back into place, and saying, "Hey, man, get back in there." And one of the things that I remember is it didn't hurt. And that was the day that I made an agreement that I would no longer feel pain. I would no longer cry. I would no longer be bothered by the things of this world. And I went on a tear from that moment on of just getting as messed up, as crazy as I could, and in getting in fights, getting drunk, and all the nonsense that most of you know what I'm talking about. But in order to continue that on, in order to stay focused on how much you need or how much numbs the pain, you have to get involved on a much bigger level. So the use became to distribution on a street corner level to an international level. And I got to see how evil the world really is. one of these times, about 11 years ago, exactly, 11 years ago, I got a phone call. And I picked up the phone, and of course I was passed out on the ground because I never really made it to a bed. And I got a phone call, and this lady got on the phone, and she said, Dallas, and I said, yeah, you know, who is this? Who's bothering me? A hangover, all the nonsense. And she says, Julie wants to talk to you. And I'm like, what? So I get the phone, and Julie says, hey, Dallas, I have something to tell you. I say, yeah, what do you want? And she goes, you have a daughter. And I thought to myself and said, well, you're pregnant? Because there's ways to handle that, because that's how evil, that's how twisted I had become. And she said, no, you actually have a daughter now. And here I am, 22 years old, finding out that I have a daughter. And it was unbelievable. And what I did was decided to go to the hospital, find out who this girl was. And my father was there, who I hadn't seen in quite some time. And he says to me, son, you have two choices. I said, really, you have some advice? You have some advice for me? That's great. And he said, you can go up there and you can change your life, or you can leave. So I went up and I held my daughter for the first time. And that was the moment that my heart cracked open and I began to cry. And here was this tiny little girl that I knew, actually that God knew, that I wasn't going to screw that up. I immediately left the hospital after I held her. I went and found one of my friends who was born the exact same day as me. We were friends growing up. We got involved in the same nonsense all over the place. And I said to him, I said, hey man, I'm out. I'm going to change this. I'm going to be a dad. And I said, why don't you come with me? And he goes, no man, I'm going to continue on. And for the next year and a half, God radically transformed me. I stopped using, I stopped abusing, I stopped acting like a fool and carrying on. I went back to school. I got a job. I worked 60 hours a week. I took 21 credit hours because I knew that I was going to fight for that girl. I spent a year and a half in court with her mother. Finally got joint custody, awarded joint custody, and started to rebuild that. I became a teacher, and I started to rebuild that relationship. And let me tell you something. That lady, Julie, is now my wife, and we have 4 beautiful, beautiful children. God can do anything, even for you. As broken and as messed up as you think you are, God can redeem anything as long as you allow him in. See, I take myself back to when I held that little girl. That was the moment that he opened up. He opened up my heart and began to do surgery. And God goes after us and starts to peel layers of our heart, layers of our nonsense, layers of our pain away from us. And 11 years later, my daughter was born on February 2nd of 2002. Actually, 10 years it was. 10 years to the date. On February 2nd, 2012, my friend is dead. See, God sets before us life and death. So there's 2 kids, 2 boys brought into the world. And throughout life, God chases us and says, hey, listen, I want you to choose me. Choose life or death. But he gives us the power of free will. There were 2 boys. One chose life, one chose death. It's time for you to make a choice. And God loves you. And he wants you to call him out.
And I believe I can fly. I believe.
Thank you for watching this edition of From the Eagle's Nest with your host, Dr. Russ Moyer. Eagle Worldwide Ministries offers a variety of resources to strengthen the body of Christ. Check out our product store at www.eagleworldwide.com. Are you satisfied where you are in your Christian life? Do you have a heart to advance to the next level in your spiritual destiny? Then check out Dr. Russ Moyer's new venture, the Elisha Project. It's an online discipleship mentoring program made for you. Check it out at www.ariseglory.com. www.ariseglory.com. Get the mentoring and the discipleship that you've always wanted by Dr. Russ Moyer, who has a heart to raise up this generation to fulfill the prophetic destiny call. Check it out at ariseglory.com. This is for you. This is for now. God bless you.
I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. I spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. You'll see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. 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 I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. I spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. You'll see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. 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 I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. I spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. I see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly.